Right. Okay. Over here. Focus. Are you there? There you are. Obviously, I made a separate video about Manchester United Lyon. If you didn't see that, you need to up your ism game. I don't know what else to tell you. But today we're chilling in my parents' house talking about every other game that happened in the Europa and the Conference League. And I've got to be honest, it once again delivered. I love the fact that we have 3 European competitions. I love the drama that it provides. And I love the storylines that are developing out of each of these competitions. Obviously, Manchester United's match was insane, right? It was maybe my favorite match that I've seen in such an unbelievably long time. But it was not the only huge surprise. I'm gonna lead. I'm gonna go a little inverted pyramid style. I'm gonna lead with the best thing that you're gonna hear about in this entire video. If you weren't paying attention, that's Bodø Glimt against Lazio, which normally, if Manchester United Lyon had not happened, this would be the match that captured the headlines. There's so many parts of this story that I freaking love. You can probably tell. I get more energetic. I talk faster when I'm super excited about something. I love Bodø Glimt. I love any team that feels like they're playing Football Manager in real life. That's what Bodø Glimt feels like. Since when does a team north of the Arctic Circle that wasn't a contender for the Norwegian title 10 years ago, since when do they become a team that can go on the road against Lazio and come out with a win? All right, Bodø Glimt, they won 2-0 at home against Lazio in the first leg. Now, I realize you might not have watched this, but if you didn't, you missed out because Bodø Glimt was the better team. And in my opinion, it wasn't close. And Bodø Glimt, I said it at the time, was more likely to win that match 6-0 than Lazio was to win the match at all. It ended up being 2-0, and that was hard done on Bodø Glimt that it was 2-0. And I've been really impressed with the way Lazio's played. I'm not a hater. They were the best team in the league stage. I thought they had a chance to go on and win this whole tournament, which is why I was so stunned they got throttled. They got dominated when they went up to they went up to the Arctic Circle and got slapped around like they stole something from their mama, right? Second legs in Italy, completely different story. It's like a fish out of water. You got these guys from north of the Arctic Circle playing in, one of the massive cathedrals of the game against Lazio, a Lazio fan base. Again, I have a personal friend who's a Lazio fan, not one of those Lazio fans. He's just a guy that grew up because his dad was a fan of the team, right? And I'm talking to him about the game, and these Lazio fans, there's blood in the water in the sense that they're so amped because they're not normally in this position. This is a European quarterfinal for Lazio. I mean, you think about Bodø Glimt's not normally here. Obviously, they're never here. Lazio's not here a lot either. This is a big club that is starved of success. And so they get an early goal in this match, and it's like lighting the touch paper. They're ready to rock. Okay, the stadium's rocking. They're whistling. They're going absolutely nuts. But Bodø Glimt was in this game. This wasn't a Lazio domination. Okay, Bodø Glimt's definitely in this game, and as things progress kind of into the second half, it becomes clear that Bodø Glimt is actually going to be pretty dangerous up to this point. I'm not going to pretend that Lazio wasn't the better team, right? They are, right? You could see on the XG, right? That XG story was not lying. Lazio was better, but of course, Lazio has to be 3 goals better unless you want to go to penalties. And they get that first goal, and even though the XG accumulation is there, the 2 best chances in this game went with Bodø Glimt, in my opinion. There were 2 chances where Bodø Glimt, they had an angled 1v1 with their best striker, Hogue. And then they had a right before, 90th minute, because that's where we're at. It's 1-0, 2-1 on aggregate to Bodø Glimt to the 90th minute. And they had a ball across that this guy Helmerson, it's one of those plays where I don't even know how he misses it. He's staring at an empty net and all he has to do is one time it in. And some reason he chips it back towards the goalkeeper who catches it. It had to be a goal. It was the goal. Lazio was pushing late, trying to create something because they're down a goal. Bodø Glimt gets a 2-on-2 situation. They get basically an open look and he doesn't score. And that guy must have been having a heart attack because right after that, Lazio comes down and just wills a ball into the back of the net. Classic late match goal. Bodies everywhere. Bodies hit the floor. Boots with the fur. And all of a sudden the ball's in the back of the net. And we're going extra time. And then it looks over. Because in extra time, Lazio manages to score again. And you're thinking at home, it's already 2-0 on the day. Right? And Lazio has control a little bit more of the ball. They have, they've taken more shots. They've been in more of a sense, particularly after that second goal, they've been the predators on the prairie. Right? They get the third goal, and you're thinking much the same way that you were thinking when United was up 2-0 against Lyon in the first half. Okay, there it is. We were like, if you've watched a million matches, you know, once that goal happens, the majority of the time, the vast majority of the time, it's over. Right? Bodø Glimt gave it an incredible go. They got to extra time in the European quarterfinal, is the champions of Norway. That's an amazing result for them. But Lazio was the favorite in this tie, and Bodø Glimt had just kind of this weird, special matchup in Norway that made Lazio really have to work for it, but now we're here. The problem with that narrative is that Bodø Glimt didn't blink. And this is where so many of these teams blink. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm always of the opinion that there are more teams out there than actually make a deep run that have the talent to hang in this type of matchup. I do believe there's a team in Poland. There's a team in Belgium. There's a team in freaking Switzerland, right? That has the talent to go on the field against a team like Lazio or a team like Lyon or whoever, or Fiorentina or whoever else is popping up in Europe, and try them and hang with them. And if they're in a situation where that big team's uncomfortable and they're comfortable, like, I don't know, north of the Arctic Circle, they can dominate them. But where those teams usually fold is right here. Big environment. You're not used to it because you never play in it. There isn't a stadium this big in the entire country of Norway, right? The majority of these players have never played in a stadium or an environment quite like this. And if they have, it's been like one time in part of their, their last couple of years of European experiences. But even if it wasn't this intensity. It wasn't extra time, right? This is a sort of situation that a team like Lazio playing in the cup, playing in the league, they're going to run into this sort of moment a lot more. Bodø Glimt doesn't. And yet they put together a nice move, and the guy that butchered the unbelievably obvious chance earlier in the match heads it home. It's a beautiful goal. Great pass, great header, back of the net. And the Lazio's fans were stunned. I would have been stunned. Because you think it's over. I mean, you know it's not over, but you think it's over. And then all of a sudden it's not, and then there's Helmerson. He got sent off late. It's a terrible second yellow. I thought it was actually a pretty good challenge. Might have given him the yellow for being reckless, but fortunately, that didn't end up affecting the game because it was basically already over anyways. And that's when we go to a penalty shootout, which was one of the weirder penalty shootouts I've ever seen. Briefly, Bodø Glimt misses the first penalty. Lazio scores it. So they're up a goal. Then all of a sudden, Bodø Glimt scores the next two penalties. Lazio has one saved and then skies one. And boom, it's 2-1. It's flipped. Who's in the lead? Instantly. Then Bodø Glimt scores to go up 3-1. And once Bodø Glimt goes up 3-1, Lazio has three things that they need to happen in order. The first is Guendouzi needs to score. The second is that the captain and, in my opinion, probably the best player on Bodø Glimt, Patrick Berg, has to miss. And he skies at Harry Kane in the World Cup style. And then they need Tati Castellanos to score. And he just takes a pretty bad penalty that's saved instantly, and Bodø Glimt wins anyways. It was a wild penalty shootout to cap off a wild match. And Bodø Glimt is now the first ever Norwegian team to make it all the way to the, not Champions League, but to any European semifinal ever. This is unbelievable. The Norwegian league doesn't do this. The Danish league, the Swedish league, those are both better leagues in Scandinavia. Norway? I mean, they've had one team pop up here or there, and that one team's been Bodø Glimt the last couple of years. But this is the Europa League semifinal we're talking about. The Europa League semifinal. And Bodø Glimt is going there after having beaten the literal best team in the Europa League stage. Lazio, particularly in this tournament, was not a pushover. And now, you know who they play? Tottenham, of course. Tottenham won it 1-0. I love this for Ange. I am an unabashed Ange Postecoglou fan. I've loved his career. Right? I always thought he was a great manager. And he always says, everybody was clowning him when he said he wins a trophy in his second season because he gets knocked out in a cup. Well, guess what? There's a lot of trophies he could win. And he's managed to keep this team alive. And Eintracht Frankfurt is very good. Eintracht Frankfurt has won this tournament recently. They are a team that goes into these matches and these sorts of tournaments. They are one of the favorites for this competition. And Tottenham needed to win on the road, and they won. Was it pretty? No, they only had 39% of the ball. Their only goal was a penalty. But they won. This is a more impressive result than I think most people, particularly in England and in the English media, will give them credit for. Eintracht Frankfurt is, you know, there's teams that are just solid. They are solid. They are solid 1 through 11. They have years of European experience and high level Bundesliga competitiveness. Tottenham doesn't. On any, like, obviously not Bundesliga experience, but on any account, they don't have any of that juice. And yet they managed to get that result. Then in the most predictable result, Rangers survived an early red card to get the 0-0 at home. They needed some weird stuff to happen at Bilbao. I think Bilbao's the best team left in this competition. They have been brilliant the last couple of years in the Liga. Obviously, they won a trophy for the first time in 40 years. This is a real golden generation for Bilbao, and that applies obviously for them more than it does for most people. And this was essentially, it was going about your business. This was not close. There was a gap between Bilbao and Rangers. And Rangers is a team, obviously, that would have hoped they could win this competition. Remember when Eintracht Frankfurt won, they beat Rangers in the final in this Europa League. Well, now, right now, Rangers is out because they ran into Bilbao. And honestly, Bilbao is a Champions League level team that's playing in the Europa League, which is going to be tough for Manchester United, who they play next. But finally, we got the boring Europa League out of the way. And that joke doesn't really work anymore because it was unbelievably exciting. We can go to the Conference League, where my favorite match was this one. Fiorentina have done it the dramatic way the entire tournament. Obviously, we've been tracking the entire tournament that way, right? But Fiorentina, they played with fire a little bit against Celje too. The last great underdog of the Conference League, Celje. The 5th place team from the Slovenian league. I have no idea how they managed to get all the way to a European quarterfinal. It's a ridiculous run. And what's even more ridiculous is coming into this match at Fiorentina, they were only down 1 goal and perhaps deserved more than that. They go behind, they're down 3-1, and then all of a sudden, for 2 minutes, Celje managed to tie it up. I just want you to acknowledge the fact that those 2 minutes existed. They scored 2 goals in 11 minutes in the second half to tie this on aggregate at 3, and that's just beautiful. Obviously, Fiorentina woke up a little bit after that. Moise Kean, who's been immense for Fiorentina in part of this European run, he scored. They had another goal, obviously disallowed, but the pressure was with them. And am I going to pretend that Fiorentina isn't the better team? No, they are. But in both of these legs, they weren't. Look at that. Celje had 63% of the ball. I don't know what's happening here. Celje feels like some sort of chemical accident. Like they have one team that plays in the league and then one team that shows up for Europe. What do you mean they had 63% possession on the road against a Serie A team as a team that was in 5th in Slovenia? How's that? At least Bodø Glimt's dominating Norway. What are they doing? Nothing. Losing to Olimpia Ljubljana in Slovenia. And they managed to, I mean, there is all sorts of possibilities here. They were hard done to lose that first leg as well. There are all sorts of possibilities here where Celje would have pulled off a massive upset. If you're a Fiorentina fan, you have to just be happy that you survived, right? Real Betis also had to survive. They went on the road to Poland, which is not easy, right? They did have a 2-0 lead. Bit of a scare, disallowed goal in the first half, but Real Betis really kind of cruised through this. They got a goal from Cedric Bakambu in the second half to make sure that the explosive offense of Jagiellonia was kind of pushed to one side. They only got 0.46 XG. Then it turned out Jagiellonia couldn't create the kind of offense they needed in, you know, when it mattered most in the quarterfinal. And the other Polish team was also knocked out in classic Chelsea fashion. They won 3-0 in Poland and then lost at home. There was a brief moment of hope. Legia Warsaw down 3-0, but they got a goal 10 minutes in. You know that? Oh, we only need 2 more. And then they got a goal in the 53rd, and you're saying, oh, we only need 2 more. But the end of the road for the 2 Polish teams that made it to the quarterfinal. They gave a good showing. More disappointed in Jagiellonia because they had been definitely the better of the 2 between Jagiellonia and Legia Warsaw. But the offense, the explosive 3-4 goal offense that we've been seeing from Jagiellonia just did not do anything against Real Betis. So Chelsea, Real Betis, and Fiorentina, the 3 Power 5 league clubs, have made it to the semifinal, and they're joined by Djurgården. This whole tie was a mess. The first leg was 0-0, separated by an own goal that made it 1-0. It was just, it was an absolute, I don't even know. It was just a complete And it was just a complete and utter mess. Complete and utter mess. And then the second leg starts with a 7th minute red card. Like, this is just, it's a rolling disaster. And then Djurgården, of course, scores a penalty. And then there's an own goal for Rapid Vienna to make it 1-1, which means Rapid Vienna is actually ahead 2-1 on aggregate, wall down a man, wall at home. This is in Vienna. And the environment in Austria, they're great. I've been to one match in Austria, and they get the flares out, they get the flags out. They're big on the ambiance. And so that place is going crazy. 77th minute, Djurgården, who've been up a man since the 7th minute, score a goal in order to, tie things up on aggregate. And then in extra time, the dam finally breaks. They get 2 more goals, and then there's a late red card for Rapid Vienna as well. So Rapid Vienna held on as much as they could. They scored 2 different own goals throughout the course of this tie, but Djurgården was probably the better team. You also have to factor in the fact that Djurgården is just getting into the season. Rapid Vienna's at the end of theirs. Sweden plays a summer league. And so particularly in the first tie, there were injuries, there were suspensions, there were fitness questions. Djurgården's going to be warming up as this tournament goes through the rest of the knockouts. And that's what brings us to a semifinal. I actually don't remember the upcoming fixtures in the Conference League. Djurgården's playing Chelsea and Fiorentina's playing Real Betis. I think both of these are going to be good matches. Djurgården is, especially as they get more fit and more ready for these matches, dangerous for Chelsea. We've now reached a point, I think, where Chelsea has to kind of start paying attention. They can't walk in with both eyes closed against Djurgården and think that they're going to walk out. And if you have not watched a match at Djurgården, I have. Not in person, I'm just talking about on TV. I haven't been everywhere yet. But that is a tough environment. That is a very tough environment. And that's where the first leg is being played. Things can get really spicy if that first leg goes a certain way and Djurgården gets the win. And now all of the pressure's on Chelsea coming home, because most people that are rooting for Chelsea, rightfully probably, have never seen the name Djurgården before, and they have no idea what they're dealing with. Fiorentina and Real Betis, I'd make Betis the slight favorite, but let's be honest. It's going to be an absolute slugfest between 2 clubs that normally don't have a chance to win a European trophy. And that's what the Conference League represents. It represents an opportunity to be essentially the best of the rest. And that's fun. And don't tell me it's not hard to win. Because the German and the French team that were already in this competition, they're not here anymore. They got knocked out by teams like Celje and Jagiellonia and Legia Warsaw. It takes focus and it takes a certain amount of execution to be able to survive this sort of tournament.